Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to our very first episode of our Edmonton Oilers Throwback 2010 franchise mode here in NHL 25. So we are going to be doing a throwback franchise mode with my roster, and I'm very excited for you guys to see it. So without further ado, let's get into this very first episode. Basically, I have plans to go over every team's roster in this episode, so it might be a little bit of a longer episode. But I will show you guys, obviously, our roster on paper, what we have in the AHL as well. And then we'll probably simulate through the preseason, so that way we get actually everybody's lineup for the start of the season, and we can kind of see what the AI is running for every single team. But this franchise mode should be pretty interesting. Obviously, not a lot of rule changes, but obviously a lot of different players in this roster build than the current NHL. A lot of the guys that played in this season obviously are long retired. There's some people that are still playing, but it is still kind of insane how this season was literally 15 years ago. So let's get into our contracts and showing you guys what we have on this roster. It's an interesting team to say the least. At this point in time, obviously the Oilers were just becoming a pretty bad team around. They did have some good pieces, but basically this is before obviously the drafting of like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Taylor Hall, guys like Connor McDavid, Nail Yakupov, that type of thing. So should be interesting to see what we could do with this team and how we could build this roster up. Obviously, we won't be able to draft McDavid in this because those drafts don't go as far as that. But we might be able to draft somebody like Nathan McKinnon in year 4, which would be interesting. So should be cool to build up this team and also trade away maybe some players to teams they actually played for, stuff like that. So let me show you guys what we're rocking with. So in terms of our roster on paper, we're obviously going to just start with our offensive core. This is our center core at the moment. I will remove my face so you guys can actually see a little bit more of the contractual information. But first and foremost, we do have some young players, like I said, on this roster. So Sam Gagner is one of these guys. That should be a pretty decent player for us, at least to build around for the early years of this. Who knows how long he'll be an Oiler for. But yeah, he's an 84 overall playmaker, 20 years old, and also has tape to tape, so might be able to pick up some assists. He was really good in his early years of his career, obviously became more of a middle six option down the road, but I think he's still a pretty useful player for this team. We also do have Sean Horkov, which his contract is going to be a little bit of an anchor at the beginning because it is on a no movement clause. He's making $5.5 million for quite a while, so the only way I see us being able to move out from a guy like Sean Horkov is obviously getting him to waive that clause or buying him out, which I don't know if I would buy him out, to be honest. He's 30 years old, so he's not necessarily super young, but he's not old either. Obviously, you can't take a look at his stats, but he's a decent player in general. Good two-way forward. Should be able to help us out with like our penalty kill and also provide some offense in that top 6. We also have another good young player here in Cogliano, who's 22 at this point, 82 overall, medium top 9. Should be a good penalty kill for us, and also obviously has a very solid durability at 95. So he shouldn't get injured too often. He's got great skating, so I expect him to be one of these guys that are going to be fun to watch when we jump into games in like the playoffs when we get there down the road, if we still have him on the roster, that is. So excited to see how Cogliano and Gagner do in these first few seasons. Obviously, I don't expect us to be a playoff team for quite a while, but obviously there is going to be pieces that we want to ship away. Guys like Mike Comrie, for instance, probably is a guy we could easily ship out in year 1. He might over-simulate a little bit. He is an 81 overall at 29, so he's not the best player in the world. At this point in time, his durability was absolutely shit. He was getting injured a ton, so I honestly don't know how long he's going to be in the lineup for the season, but he might be somebody we'd look to flip away depending on how he's simulating. There's also Gilbert Brulé, who's a little bit younger as well, 22 years old, the former Columbus Blue Jacket. I think he should be a decent player to have for us for a few years at least, considering he's 22 years old. Doesn't have a super high ceiling. He's kind of like a lesser version of Cogliano, but I still think he could be a part of the basically the rebuild for the early on stage of this franchise mode. But then again, if he has trade value, maybe it would be worth moving out from him. But I would say probably him, Cogliano, and Gagner are the guys to keep on center. Marc-Antoine Pouliot's not really much of anything, to be honest. He's just a young kind of bottom 6 option. Like, he's probably not going to become much more than that because he's already 24 years old at this point. But he should be still an okay option for us. Apparently, he fits really well with our second line, so maybe we'll move him higher up in the lineup and see if he could fit up in that top 6 a bit better and maybe outgrow that potential a little bit more or get to like an 80 overall or something like that. Aside from that, on our left wing side of things, we do have Dustin Penner, who's 26 years old at this point. Doesn't have a clause in his contract, which is nice, but only signed for 3 years. So he's probably one of their most valuable players on the team in terms of trade value. So I would probably think about trading him probably year 1 or year 2 even for that matter. Like, we don't have to rush to trade him, but he should be able to fetch us something decent, I would assume. He's just a big body that could score goals and all that stuff at this point in his career. Obviously, his entire career was kind of a weird one. Like, he had some good years, he had some really bad years too. And then obviously he eventually cut his hand on some pancakes. So not really too sure what to make of Dustin Penner. But like I said, I don't know if he'll be a part of this team for the long haul or not. Aside from that, we do also have some other younger options. Patrick O'Sullivan's okay too. A little bit more of an injury-prone player as well in his career, but he still should be a good player that might over-simulate as well that we could take advantage of in terms of trade value. We also do have our captain in Ethan Morrow, which is kind of interesting. Morrow is kind of, at this point in his career, just a pure bottom 6 guy, I would say. Definitely a little bit more on the aggressive side of things. So we'll see what we end up doing with Ethan Morrow. He's only signed for 2 years, so maybe we just keep him here, let him go to free agency like he did in real life, because in real life he played with LA and Columbus after this. So maybe we trade him away to a contending team, because obviously I don't think we're going to be a playoff team in year 1. So that could be a play. We also do have a lot of other younger guys like Robert Nilsson, for instance, who's 24 years old as well at this point. So just like a little bit of a better version, I would say, of Marc-Antoine Pouliot. We also do have Ryan Jones, who's not really much of anything at this point. He'll probably just cap out around at 77, maybe a 79 at highest. And we also have JF Schock, who's another like kind of physical presence in that bottom 6. So it's not really the best depth when you look at our centers and left wingers. From a right wing perspective, we don't really have a lot other than Ales Hemsky, who is probably the main player on this team we need to think about trading away. He's only signed for 3 years, and then we would have to trade him away at that point probably, because we probably won't be good at this point in time. I think we could even trade him away in year 1 if we really want to, but it would be nice to kind of hold on to him for a little bit, because obviously he's an Oilers legend. He's only 26 years old, so it's not like he's 30 plus or whatever. He's a really good player. He's got that X factor. I think he's one of the only players on our team I gave a gold X factor to, but very good offensive player, good passing, very good skater, and not very physical, but I think he should be a pretty useful player for our team. His durability is a 65 in this. I don't know if I made it a little bit too low, because I don't know if he was injury prone yet at this point. I think he might have been, because I think he missed actually a good chunk of the season in real life, if I remember right. But I really hope that he could stay healthy for us, because that's the main problem with Hemsky in his career, is obviously he had some injury trouble. Aside from that, we do have Fernando Pisani in the last year of his deal. Obviously, Pisani, at this point, not really too much of anything. He was very good, obviously, in the 2006 playoff run. But aside from that, yeah, Pisani probably is a guy that doesn't have a lot of value either. Probably just goes to free agency. I don't think we'll be able to get much via trade for him, but we could definitely try. And then we also have another physical presence in Zach Sortini. So that's our offense, of course. So not really great when you look at it on paper. You can see there are just some good players like Hemsky, Penner, Gagne, Horkov. I'd say these guys are okay too, but it just like the depth is not really there with this team. So it'll be interesting to see how we simulate from an offensive standpoint. Then we get into the defensive core, and this defensive core is probably one of the main reasons why this team wasn't as good. Like, I'd say our forward core is okay, but you look at our defensive core, we have some good pieces in the top 4, but in general, it's just a very weak defensive core. Like, Sheldon Souray is great, don't get me wrong, but yeah, he's not, at this point in his career, his durability is also a little bit lower too, because he was getting injured quite a bit. So I don't really know what to make of Sheldon Souray. I think he'll produce well, but I don't know if he's part of our long-time future, because he's already 33 at this point in time as well. So maybe he's similar to somebody like Dustin Penner or Sean Horkov if we could get rid of him. I don't really know. We also do have Tom Gilbert, a little bit of a younger defenseman, 26 years old. So maybe we could hold on to Tom Gilbert for a few years. But also he's signed for a few years, actually same years as Souray. So maybe he's a guy that we would ship away here in maybe year 2 or 3. We don't necessarily need to trade him in year 1, but we could do that just like Penner, because they're both like the exact same age. Pretty similar overalls, that type of thing. Aside from that, we also do have Ryan Whitney, who's also signed for a few years, a little bit longer than Gilbert and Souray. he's another type of guy that I could probably flip away just like Gilbert, so we'll see what we end up doing with him. We also do have a couple other defenders, which most of these guys aren't as good. We do have Ladislav Smid, who's a little bit of a younger defenseman, 23 years old. Solid top 6 defenseman, but not really a top 4. We have Aaron Johnson, who's already 26 at this point, not going to grow much more than that. And then Jason Strudwick, who's 34, obviously is not going to become much of anything. He's pretty much just a depth option / top 6 at best. So there's our defensive core. And then from a goaltending perspective, this is where we're a little bit problematic. We do have Heavy Bullen, who's pretty much going to drop off probably in the first year, I would assume, or maybe even in year 2. But yeah, he's not very good at this point in time. He's an 84, which is solid. But at this point in time, this was one of the worst years of his career. His durability is also pretty shit, so I don't expect him to be super healthy all year round. And we also have Jeff Delorier as a backup. And Delorier is not a bad young goalie in a sense. Like, he had some okay-ish time when he was playing with Edmonton. But yeah, he's nothing really much more than a backup goaltender in his career, unfortunately. So, not the best NHL team. In the AHL, we do have some prospects. We do have guys like Devin Dubnyk at least. So Devin Dubnyk might be a future starter of this team. I don't know how he'll develop because he's already at 23 years old and a 76. So if he doesn't really develop, we might need a goalie prospect. We also do have Brian Pitton, but he has no potential whatsoever. From a defensive standpoint in the AHL, if we sort by like potential, there's Jeff Petrie who could become something, but obviously he's already 21. Theo Peckham probably doesn't become much better than this, but honestly, he could still grow. We do have Taylor Chorney, who's a 75 at 22, so Chorney might be okay. Alex Plant, I don't expect much of, but everybody else has like no potential on this defensive core. So in general, we just don't have that great of a prospect pool yet. And then from a right wing perspective, we do have Jordan Eberle unsigned, which is a very interesting one here. 75 at 19, medium top 6. Obviously having him, Gagne, Cogliano, stuff like that, at least it gives us a little bit of a core to build up on. But obviously we need to do a lot of work in terms of the drafts down the road. We also do have guys like Colin McDonald, who's not much of anything, Ryan O'Mara, and Bill Thomas. From a left wing perspective, I mean, there's Omark, but I don't really know if Linus Omark is going to really pan out that much. He's a 74 at 22, only low 9 potentials, so there's a chance he could pan out, but it's no guarantees on that. We do have Payarvi, who's got a high bottom 6, but is he going to pan out? He's good overall, so I would assume Payarvi could become a decent bottom 6 for us, but I'm not too sure for how long. We also have Liam Reddix, who's an okay option. He could definitely play in the NHL right now, but I'm not too sure if he's kind of a guy that will actually grow more than a 76, considering he's only a low bottom 6. But we'll see with that, I guess. Chris Menard's okay, and then everybody else is just pretty much AHLers. And then from a center standpoint, I guess we technically have Riley Nash as a prospect. I don't really know if he would pan out too much. In real life, the Oilers didn't sign him, I think. And then he ended up becoming a free agent and signing with the Carolina Hurricanes. He was a pretty high up pick, I think like a first round selection if I remember right. But yeah, he never actually played for the Oilers organization. We also do have Ryan Patolny, who could be maybe a bottom 6 / depth option for our team. Anton Lander maybe grows to be something. Same with Chris Vandevelde, but it's tough to say. In general, we just don't really have a ton in our system. So the ones to watch out for obviously would be like Eberle, Petrie, and maybe Riley Nash. I don't think the rest will pan out too much. Maybe Payarvi, but it's really tough to say. And also Dubnyk, I guess, too, in net. So there is our team on paper going into the season. So we don't really have a lot of clauses to deal with. The only one that's a little bit worrisome is the Sean Horkoff contract, but everybody else, at least, we kind of have a little bit more flexibility with who we can move out, which is kind of nice. So that's our team. Now, one thing is also kind of interesting that we could also do in next episode. I don't know if there's going to be teams signing people in preseason, but there is available free agents to start off this franchise mode. So we could go after some names if we really want to, but most of them are older, so it's not really like that interesting to us because obviously we're kind of looking for more younger prospects, which if we sort by potential, there's not really much anybody with not an exact potential because most of the guys I made in the free agent teams are a little bit older. There's guys like Martins Carsoms who could be interesting, maybe just to sign for the AHL, but we already have 49 out of 50 contracts, so we might not have the room to bring somebody like that in, or Camille Krebs, for instance. So I'd probably say we shouldn't really sign anybody in the free agent part. So we should let these guys all just go to random other teams because, like I said, the best is Yager, and he's a lot older. You have Fedorov, who's 39. Like, these guys should be going to cup contenders and not teams that are guaranteed they'll miss the playoffs. So, and same with these goaltenders. There's not really that much either. Like, technically, if we really wanted to upgrade from Delorier, we could bring in Telquist, but that's not really that much of an upgrade. So we might as well just see where all those guys sign in free agency. And then I think all we want to do next is simulate to the starts of the regular season. I want to make sure we have the right guys in the NHL first and foremost, though. So let's see if there's anybody that is worth calling up. We actually do have a full roster. Do we have a depth defenseman? I don't think so, right? We don't. So I got to send down a forward here, which I probably would send down. I kind of want to play like guys like Stortini a little bit because they're physical, but honestly, I probably would send down JF Jacques or Stortini, who is the younger of the two and should play more games. They're both 24. That doesn't really help. I feel like we're probably lacking more right wingers because of that, so maybe I'll send down to JF Jacques then. So JF Jacques will go down to the AHL, which is Springfield. We'll get him into the lineup down there, and we'll call up a depth defenseman from Springfield, just in case of any injuries. I guess we'll probably go for Taylor Chorney because he's not going to grow much better. Chris Armstrong's old at this point. I think, yeah, Chorney's probably the option. Like, Chorney should probably be also playing games in the AHL, hypothetically, because he's 22 only. Like, he might be able to grow more. So, you know what? Maybe I'll just bring up Armstrong just because we get the younger guy playing in the AHL still. So, let's call up Armstrong as our depth option, even though he never played an NHL game that season. That way we have a healthy scratch in case. And then from a goaltending perspective, we'll run with the same goaltending tandem. So that's all good. Let's go best AHL lines. And let's go to edit lines here and see what we want to run with for our lineup this season. So first and foremost, the AHL. Is there anybody scratched that shouldn't be? JF Jacques. Let's just go best lines and see what it ends up setting up here. So JF Jacques ends up getting scratched, which is kind of interesting. I'll throw him in for sure over Chad Wiseman because Chad Wiseman's pretty old at this stage. Aside from that, there's not really too much other people I care probably to get in. Charles Linglet's quite old at this point. Let's see what else we got. Wiseman's old. Palkovich, I think, was older too. And he's 23. I don't think he's going to grow really, though, with that potential. But I could throw him in. I'm going to just keep Menard in, I think, instead. From a center perspective, Riley Nash obviously should be in. Truckno, is there anybody to replace him? Van de Velde. Okay, well, we'll get Van de Velde in. And we'll move Riley Nash a little bit higher because he's got better potential. Actually, let's move Fredder down to the fourth line, just because Fredder's not got much potential. Right wing side of things, is there anybody that should be in? No, there is not. Let's just move some of the better potential guys higher in the lineup, just because obviously they matter a little bit more. Ooh, I don't know about the -1 really, to be honest, though. Let's just go with this. Sure, that works. And then goalies are fine. Okay, perfect. So the AHL team is nice and set up. I don't really care too much about the special teams and all that. From an NHL perspective, this is an interesting thing is what we want to run for our NHL lines. Like, I almost don't feel like I want to simulate to the start of the season yet, but I also do want to see what other teams are rocking with potentially for lines to start the year. So, trying to think of what we want to run with. Obviously, Cogliano in the top 6 and Patrick O'Sullivan in the top 6 would probably be good, but both of them are left wingers. So Cogliano as the third line center for now. Our third line left winger even might make more sense. But Comrie is that. Maybe get Brule up into the top 6. Maybe. Or maybe we could use Cogliano as a right winger. I don't think it's much of a downgrade in a sense. He's not very good at taking face-offs at this point in his career, so... How good is Comrie on the draw? 73. You know what? We'll put Comrie on the right wing on this third line. We'll get Brule taking the face-offs, Morrow on that left wing. Aside from that, who should be taking the face-offs on this fourth line? I guess it's going to be... But technically, Fernando Pisani's got the best face-offs, but Pouliot's an actual center, so we'll use him there. Defensively, I guess we'll go with something like this. I could split up Gilbert and Souray hypothetically, but maybe that might not be a bad idea. Yeah, that might not be a bad idea. And a goalie's going with that is fine. I don't really care too much about how we're set up for year one because I don't think we're going to be a playoff team. But as long as some of the younger guys get power play opportunities and all that, it should be fine. Gagne's on there. Brule's on there. Cogliano's on there. That's fine. Yeah, we don't really care too much about being actually good in year one, so let's go with that. We'll simulate through the preseason and go to a day before the season starts, and we'll take a look at every team's lineup just to see what they're rocking for the 2010 season. Hopefully this episode isn't too long. Like, I might just skim through it briefly and call out anything that looks kind of dumb or something like that. But, yeah, let's see how we do in the preseason. We got 4 preseason games only. Let's see what our coach thinks about a roster. Also, we could do some, season focuses and stuff like that in next episode too, if you guys have any ideas for what we could give to players to try and get them to grow, since this is the start of a franchise mode. So preseason focus, let's see what we should do. Let's go with, since we have a little bit of a younger guys, we could probably go something like just 5v5 focused, I guess. I don't really care too much on that. Season goal, what does he think about our roster? Yeah, there's work to do. Of course there is. That's kind of what I expected, so we'll agree on that, because this team shouldn't be a playoff team this year. We definitely should be looking for trading away some big players on this team to bring in some good prospects or picks for that matter. Also, in case you guys didn't know about the salary cap stuff in 2010, you can see the max salary cap is $57 million right now. The lowest is 40.5, which is technically 40.8 in real life, I think it was. 11.4 is the max a player could get paid, and then the minimum a player could get paid is $515,000, and the max a rookie contract is $915,000. So just a heads up on that. Alright, so let's just see how this preseason goes, which we apparently won every single preseason game. I don't expect that to happen in regular season, but let's take a look at some stats from the preseason, and then like I said, we'll go to a day before the season starts, take a look at some lines, see who's been doing what for this team. But I'm really excited to actually get simulating in next episode. It's going to be fun to see how this build simulates. Like I said, I've only simulated a few years in this before, so I don't really know what to expect too much in the later years. Alright, so from a forward perspective, Hemsky was on point, 6 assists in 4 games, no goals, but he's a playmaker mostly. Penner on 5 points. Looks like some pretty good depth scoring for the preseason. Obviously, we hope that our young guys have a good season. That's the main thing I'm hoping for with this roster. From a defensive standpoint, Sure had 3 goals. Everybody else a little bit more on the quiet side of things, but that's alright. I'm surprised that Ryan Whitney didn't pick up a single point. And then from a goaltending perspective, Javi Bullen wasn't very good, but he won every single game. And Delorier was pretty solid in 10 minutes. Alright. So that's the preseason. Let's advance to a day before the season starts, so then we can take a look at some rosters. Obviously, a lot of you guys have already seen my roster breakdown of this roster build, but it is a little bit different when you enter franchise mode and see what the AI teams decide to like run as their top line, that type of thing. So I'm kind of interested to see what we're working with here this NHL season. Also, obviously, all the divisions are a little bit different than they are in real life right now. There's 6 divisions, obviously, so just a little heads up on that in case you didn't know about that. Alright, so let's take a look at some lineups. Let's just briefly skim through some of these. I don't want to spend too much time looking at them, but I want to see if there's anything interesting. So the Ducks looking friggin' great compared to us, of course. Very good top line, Ryan, Getzlav, and Solani. Second line has Blake, Koivu, and Perry. Really good top 6. Defensively, Niedermayer's playing with Wisniewski, Vishnowski with Eminger. Any crazy scratches on this Ducks team? Not really. They did sign Michel Oulet, who was a free agent to start this franchise mode. Okay. The Atlanta Thrashers. This should be interesting. Antropov, Afinogenov, and Kozlov. Not necessarily the best Atlanta Thrashers team, but they have some potential with Evander Kane, so maybe they develop him into being a good player. Defensively, Enstrom Kabina. Okay, defensive core. Goalies. That's the biggest if for the Atlanta Thrashers is Pavlik and Hedberg. I don't think they're going to simulate very well because of that. Anybody interesting scratched? Todd White got scratched to start the season. That's a bit of a weird one considering he's an 83, but I guess they would prefer to have somebody like Marty Reisner in the lineup. At least they're putting Brian Little in a top 6 role, because obviously if they scratch Brian Little, that would not be very good. Boston, who should be a cup contender year 1, decided to sign Marcus Naslund as a free agent, so that's interesting. Naslund will get to play with Bergeron, and Jaromir Jagr signed there as well. Oh shit, okay. So the Bruins are going for it right away. They signed 2 of the big-name old guys in free agency. So shout out to Jaromir Jagr, who has joined the Bruins a little bit earlier than anticipated. And then Marcus Naslund also joining the team instead of returning to Sweden, where he played in 2010. But yeah, that's a nasty team. Mark Savard's pretty injury prone, so I don't expect him to play all 82 games this season. But yeah, this Bruins team is pretty filthy, and they definitely should be a cup contender with the signing of Jágr. I'm kind of surprised they were able to afford him in it. Also, Shatan gets scratched because of that signing of Jágr and Naslund. That's crazy. That's a little bit too good of depth almost in a way. How much did Jágr get paid, out of curiosity? 2.905. That's not too bad. And he got a no movement clause, so nice little pickup there. And Marcus Naslund got 1.93. So some cheap contracts to help out the Bruins maybe win a cup a year early. Buffalo. Top line of Vanek, Roy, and Pominville. Yep, pretty much a normal Buffalo team. I don't think they made any signings, it looks like. Actually, they did. Zubov. Sergei Zubov joined the Buffalo Sabres because he beat them in the Cup Finals in 99. Interesting. From a goaltending perspective, still Ryan Miller. And nobody scratched, huh? I was kind of surprised on that. They must be very tight on the cap space or something. And that's why they have no healthy scratch options. So, kind of curious on how Buffalo is going to run that. Calgary. Higgins, Peter Forsberg signed with the Flames. So, Forsberg and Iginla on the top line is actually kind of sick. I don't know how good Peter Forsberg's going to be because his durability is also pretty shot. So, that's an interesting pickup there for them. That does mean, that I think... Oh, yeah, Matt Stajan's a third liner. I have seen this Flames team do really well in franchise mode for some reason when Tugi was playing with it. Because Stajan, Iginla, and Hagman all of a sudden went off. So, having Forsberg as the top line guy next to Iginla instead, it might make this Flames team a little dangerous. Defensively, they didn't add anybody. Goalies, Mika Kiprusoff. Freddie Norena got signed by them. Alright. So they decided not to run... who was the other goaltender that was the backup? Was it Henrik Karlsson already at this point? I don't think so. I don't remember who the backup was. But, yeah, they signed Freddie Norena. Okay. Carolina. Wow, they're using Rod Brindamore as a winger. In my opinion, that's kind of a dumb thing that day. I probably shouldn't have done because Rod Brindamore is a face-off beast in this, but for some reason they'd prefer to play Eric Stahl down the middle instead. So I honestly don't know why they did that, but not going to question it too much. They did sign Radek Bonk as a free agent. Defensively, no additions. Goalies, still the same goalie tandem. Zach Boychuk is a healthy scratch, which isn't great for him. He doesn't have really any potential, but apparently he jumped to an 80 overall, which I don't think I made him an 80 overall, but maybe I did. He just doesn't have the potential to become really that much, because obviously he's just a Twitter guy now. So Chicago, this team's absolutely filthy. I knew they would be. They are definitely tight up against the cap, so we'll be interesting to see what they do in this franchise mode, but very good top line. But you can see that right wing depth is absolutely insane. Hossa, Kane, and Byfuglien. Like, Dustin Byfuglien's playing third line minutes. That's insane. And yes, he used to be a forward. I know some people thought he never played forward, but he used to be a forward. Defensively, great defensive core. Goaltending, good goaltending, and scratches. Hjalmarsson gets scratched. Ben Eager's okay to be scratched, but Hjalmarsson is a bit of a risky one. So we'll see what Chicago ends up doing with Nicholas Hjalmarsson down the road. Colorado, Matt Duchene is a winger next to Stastny and Hayduk. All right. Pretty solid, but Matt Hendricks in the top 6, though, is kind of a weird choice. I mean, I would probably go with Svatos if I was going with anybody, or Chris Stewart, but Matt Hendricks, I mean, I guess it's just because he's a left winger. Defensive standpoint, yeah, Colorado's going to have a rough time. They are playing Kevin Shattenkirk first year, which is kind of cool, so we'll see if Shattenkirk can become anything. And then goaltending-wise, it's Anderson and Budaj. Brent Clark gets scratched. They have 3 healthy scratched defensemen. Columbus, Rick Nash pretty much, and that's almost it, I would say. Michael Blundin's getting a chance to play. They did sign Richard Zednik as a free agent. All right. What about defense? Nobody really in changing. Actually, they did sign Dmitry Kalinin. So a couple of new Columbus Blue Jacket additions. Goalies, Steve Mason, Matthew Guerin. Pretty much that. We head to Dallas. Wow, that left wing side is pretty damn strong. Erickson, Neal, Ben, and Morrow. Aside from that, no crazy additions. They did sign Victor Kozlov as a free agent. He uses a 4th line option. I mean, that's not bad. It's not bad. From a defensive standpoint, did they add anybody? No, they did not. Goaltending. is interesting. Letnin and Turco. Scratches. Fabian Bernstrom's getting scratched, but I mean, at this point, he wasn't as good as he was when he scored a hat trick. I think it was in his NHL debut, if I remember right. Detroit's obviously filthy because they're coming off a Stanley Cup win. They did not add any free agents, it looks like, I think. No, they did not. Probably not enough cap space to really do so. They are scratching a young Justin Abdelkader. Probably not a great idea. From and I'm not Edmonton Oilers because we are Edmonton. I'm not used to being the Edmonton Oilers in franchise mode. From a Florida Panthers standpoint, pretty basic Florida team. Not much interesting, except for Jeff Taff is going to get a chance as a full-time fourth-line center. Defensively, nothing crazy. Goalies, pretty similar. Yeah, it's not really that much of a different Florida Panthers team. LA, obviously a couple years out from a Stanley Cup win in real life. No real changes. They are playing Raktis Evenins as a center, which I don't understand that. But I mean, I guess, sure. And Wayne Simmons is getting fourth line ice time when he probably should be higher than Brad Richardson, but honestly don't know if it's just better for the coach or what. Scuderi's playing with Doughty. All right. Goaltending, Jonathan Quick, Eric Erzberg. Pretty standard LA team. Minnesota. Any new additions? I don't think so. I'd expect a lot of teams to make additions, though, just because I made a good chunk of free agents. Some of them might not get signed, though, because of cap space or something like that. But pretty basic Minnesota team. Owen Nolan's a healthy scratch, and Cal Clutterbuck, so that's a bit of a weird choice. We move on to the Montreal Canadiens. Let's see what they got. Camilleri, Pekanex, and Gionta. Max Pacioretty's getting a chance to play in the top six. I think that's a great addition by the AI because they could have probably put him down on the fourth line role, but they brought in PJ Axelson, which I don't know if Tugi would like seeing PJ Axelson as a Montreal Canadian, but there it is. So Pacioretty's getting a chance in that top six, and we'll see if he ends up having a good rookie year and propelling him to become the Max Pacioretty he was in real life. So that's interesting. Defensively, pretty similar defensive core. Goaltending, Halak and Price, scratched. Moen, Hal Gill's a healthy scratch, which is crazy, but they do have a good defensive core. Matthew Darsh. We head to Nashville. Any interesting additions there that have changed? I don't think so. Nope. Defensively, wow, Suter Weber. Yeah, this defensive core in Nashville is going to be crazy. I mean, it's not the craziest yet because Yossi's not there yet, or Ryan Ellis, but it's still strong. From a goaltending perspective, still Rene and Dan Ellis. And Alexander Radulov gets scratched. It's kind of hilarious how the AI actually scratches Radulov because in real life, Radulov would have complained about his ice time. And in real life, in this season, he was actually back in Russia. But for him to be getting healthy scratch is kind of hilarious. We'll see if he ends up requesting a trade out of Nashville or being on the trading block at any point. They also have Grabeshkov there and Jordan Tutu. We head to New Jersey. Pretty basic New Jersey team. They are running Kovalchuk on the second line over Patrick Eliash, so that's a little bit of a choice. Zach Parise is playing on the third line. I don't know about that, but they do have a strong left wing crop. Maybe I should have made some of these guys left wing / right wingers, so that way maybe the AI would have been smart enough to put them on the right wing too. But I don't know about having Parise as a third liner, but at least Kovalchuk's high up. But kind of strange. I don't know what I would have done if I was running this forward rotation. Maybe I would have had Eliash as a center instead. Honestly, don't know. Defensively, ew, damn, that right side's pretty bad. Corey Murphy is playing right defense. Yikes. I don't know how this team was only 2 years out from going to a final. Goaltending, obviously, Martin Brodeur, Jan Denis, scratches, basic AHL defenseman. New York Islanders, who should be pretty bad just like us. Yeah, young John Tavares at least is getting top line time, so that's good. Good that they're utilizing him a little bit. Defensively, okay. Goaltending, Dwayne Rolson. Rolson at 39 years old is pretty hilarious, so we'll see if Dwayne Rolson ends up becoming a good goaltender around this point. Scratched, Freddie Meyer, Tim Jackman. All right. We head to the New York Rangers, who missed the playoffs in this 2010 season and in real life, so it's pretty cool to see that the Rangers can still build up good squads and they can miss the playoffs. P.A. Parenteau's getting a chance with the Rangers. That's kind of interesting because sometimes the AI has him in the AHL, I think, because I'm kind of surprised he's up there already. But we'll see if he ends up becoming much. He's playing next to Dubinsky and Avery, so two grindy kind of guys. Huh. All right. Defensively, all right. Pretty basic defensive core. Goalies, Lundqvist and Ald. And then scratch Brian Boyle and Anders Eriksson. Okay. Could be worse. Ottawa running McCulloch, Spezza, Alfredson. Love to see it. Kovalev playing with Fisher and Kelly is an interesting one as well. Okay. Foligno, Cullen, Neal. Seems similar to what the real life lines probably would have been like. I don't know if Kovalev would have been actually on that top line. I don't think so. I honestly don't know how it was set up. But having Kelly and Fisher playing together is kind of neat. I like it. Defensively, Volchenkov and Carlson. Nice pairing there. Karkner, Phillips, Kuba, and Campoli. So really strong left side. A little bit of a weaker right side, but obviously young EK65. He should develop into becoming really good. And in goaltending, Pascal Leclerc and Brian Elliott. Scratched Jonathan Chichu. Obviously, at this point in his career, he was not as good anymore. And then you still have Ryan Shannon and Andy Sutton. Philadelphia. Gagne, Giroux, Briere. Damn, man, this top six is nice. Carter, Richards, and Hartnell. Philadelphia could definitely be a good team to sim. Third line has the young JVR with Pau and Lapierre. Okay. That looks good. Defensively, Pronger, Timonen. Yeah, no complaints with how the Flyers are setting up their roster right now. Any scratches that shouldn't be? Merrick Malik they signed in free agency, I guess. Daniel Carcillo is the other scratch, which makes sense because he's a grindy guy. Phoenix, Shane Doan. Any changes, really? Not really. Kind of weird that they put Wolski on the fourth line, but I don't really know where else they would slot him in. He's a left winger as well, though. So you think that they would put him up here and then move Taylor Pyatt down, but I don't know. Defensively, pretty solid left side, solid right side as well. Phoenix has a good defensive core. And then goaltending, they have a good goaltender in Brzgalov and LaBarbera. Scratches Peruka, Schneider, and Sammy Lepisto. Pittsburgh obviously won the Stanley Cup in 2009, coming off back-to-back finals. They were really good. They're running a top line of Malkin, Crosby, and Guerin. Second line's Kennedy, Stahl, Kunitz. Interesting Penguins team. Kind of surprised that they're running both Crosby and Malkin on the same line, but it still works, I guess. Defensively, Gonchar, Letang. Chris Chelios signed there as a free agent because obviously I made the mistake of basically giving the Atlanta Thrashers too many skaters that were in the organization. So one gets dropped in and it ends up being Chris Chelios, who goes to a team that could win the Stanley Cup in year one. So shout out to Chris Chelios on joining the Penguins. Very old at this point, 47 years old. Damn. Goaltending perspective, Fleury and Johnson scratched. Jay McKee, Matt Cook got scratched, which is nice to see. Hopefully that means he won't run into anybody important like EK65. And then Brooks Orpik is also scratched. We head to the San Jose Sharks. What the heck? Why is this inverting? Okay, never mind. San Jose Sharks. Top line, Heatley, Thornton, Pavelski. Oh my goodness. They signed Sergei Fedorov. Oh my god. That top six is nasty. Like, they didn't even need to add Fedorov in that top six. Would have been good. Logan Couture is going to be playing third line, and he's going to develop into being a very solid player, of course, for them down the road. It sucks that he retired in real life recently, because he's a former 67s player here in Ottawa. So we'll see what Couture develops into, but he should develop into be something really good for them. And the fact that they brought in somebody like Sergei Fedorov for a year, yeah, this San Jose team might be able to win a Stanley Cup in the first year of this franchise mode, because that center depth is great, the left wing depth is great, the right wing depth is pretty solid, defensive core is obviously really good. Yeah, this Sharks team is really, really good. And goalies is good too. Damn. Jocelyn and Nickel, the scratches. We head to St. Louis, Korea, Bacchus boys, Oshie, McDonald, Kachuk. All right, yeah, it's a pretty basic St. Louis Blues team. Really good down the middle. Defensively, Jackman, Johnson, Sador, Pollock, Brewer, Weaver. Kind of interesting that Brewer would be on the top six over the top four. And then goalies, Mason and Conklin. Scratches, Cam Jansen, BJ Crombeen, and Carlo Koliakovo. I don't know about scratching Koliakovo if I'm them. I would probably have scratched maybe Weaver, but I honestly don't know. It's a little bit of a strong defensive core, so it kind of makes some sense. From a Tampa Bay Lightning perspective, Tanguay, LeCavalier, St. Louis, Downey, Stamkos, and Malone. Obviously, Malone's got a boat anchor of a contract, which is going to be interesting to see how that Tampa team deals with it for the first 4 years. Aside from that, they did sign Yuri Novotny as a free agent. Interesting pickup for them there. Not going to do too much for them. Aside from that, pretty basic bottom six. Defensive core, young Victor Hedman, of course. Pretty basic defensive core. Goalies, Mike Smith and Taron Itamaki. And I do have 2 grindy guys scratched in Konopka and Fedoruk. We head to Toronto, and this should be probably one of the worst teams in this franchise mode. Top line of Nikolai Kuhlman, who's a 79, Tyler Bozak, and Phil Kessel. So Kessel basically should run this offensive core, and he could get some guys like Bozak to produce well, so I don't mind the Leafs putting these 2 guys on that top line, but this is quite the team. Very, very weak, especially on the offensive side of things, I would say. Like, recall Erdwall Lean's going to start the season. Mike Zigomanis as well. Defensively, I mean, the defensive core is a little bit stronger, I would say, for sure, but still. I mean, kind of weird that they're running Thomas Kaberle as a top 6 defenseman, but not going to complain too much. Goalies, Jaguar Gustafsson, scratch Colton Lohr, Carl Gunnarsson, and Garnet Exelby. All right. We head to Vancouver, who should be very good. They are running both Sedins together and Ryan Kessler for some reason as a winger. I don't understand that at all either, because Kessler has quick draw and 88 overall. He should be definitely a center, and they could easily move somebody like Burrows into this top line spot instead. Dimitri can maybe go over to being like a winger as well, something like that. Interesting. Defensively, what do they got? Pretty basic defensive core, similar to most Canucks defensive cores of the past. Luongo, Raycroft, Glass, and O'Brien as scratches. And then finally, the Washington Capitals. Obviously, this line usually simulates really well in franchise. Ovi, Backstrom, and 7. We'll see that line probably up there in points at the end of the season. Now, I did make the scoring, I think it was medium. The shot frequency, I think I changed it down to medium, if I remember right as well, from high. So we'll see how this simulation actually works out, but should be interesting to see the numbers and stuff at the end of the season. Obviously, if it doesn't simulate well, we could readjust it in the next season, but it's a bit of a work in progress. So not really any crazy additions. I mean, Keith Aucoin's getting NHL time, which is kind of surprising because he was very good in the AHL that year, and most years he was in the AHL. Defensive core, I mean, John Carlson's getting a chance right out of the gate. That's kind of surprising, too, because obviously in the AHL, I think he played a good chunk in the AHL that year and won the Calder Cup. And in goaltending, they are running Theodore and Varlamov. And in scratches, Jersina and Erskine. So, some pretty good teams out there. Definitely, when you look at our team on paper now, you can definitely see why we are going to have a little bit of a tough time with the roster. I didn't want to go V-lines. I wanted to go to Ed lines here. Because you could definitely see that our lineup doesn't really shape up that well. Like, it's not the worst team on paper, probably in the entire league, but it definitely needs some work. And like I said, we might want to prioritize some of these younger guys, which means we might want to think about trading away some of the veteran type of guys. Not necessarily next episode, but definitely at the trade deadline. So, but still an interesting team. I just hope that we don't over-simulate, because I do kind of want to have some good picks in the upcoming draft, because if we look at the draft class as well, briefly, obviously we're not going to know too much about it in terms of potentials and all that, but it is the Taylor Hall draft, like I said. There's also guys like Tyler Seguin, of course, Vladimir Tarasenko, Mark Stone, Artemi Panarin. This is kind of unfortunate timing just based on stuff that might have happened. Ryan Johansson. There's a lot of generated guys too, or a couple generated guys, but there won't be as much in the first few drafts just because I turned the draft class quality down to low. So once obviously our draft classes that I've made are done, we will obviously up that a bit. But right now, it's mostly guys I've made in this draft class, which is good. So we'll see what we end up grabbing in terms of the draft. But I think we definitely need a lot of good potential prospects in every single area. So with that said, that's going to do it, guys, for this very first episode of our Edmonton Oilers Throwback 2010 franchise mode. So in next episode, we'll probably simulate to like maybe halfway through the season or January the 1st, something like that. Get a good little chunk of simulation done to see how this team's actually simulating. And then after that, obviously, we'll make our decisions maybe for the episode afterwards on what we might want to trade away at the deadline this year. Because I think, obviously, the number one thing we should be doing is trying to offload some players. And then if we can, try and prioritize the young guys, get them higher in the lineup and stuff like that, so that way they could start developing maybe out of their potential ranges. And then hopefully in the draft in the next few episodes as well, we're able to find some good prospects for our team, so we could start building up a little bit of a core through the draft, that type of thing. So I think down below, and I'll see you guys next time.